Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Adventures in Mask Making. After the disappointment that we faced in the last episode from the mask that we purchased from Turkey, we've decided to make the mask ourselves. And like the old saying goes, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. I've spent numerous hours getting familiar with TinkerCAD, and what you are about to see is the third and final mask design. If you're interested in making a mask or 3D modeling, then sit back, relax, and watch someone who has no idea what they're doing try to create a mask model in this episode of Adventures in Mask Making, Tinkerin' Around. Alright everyone, so to make the face of the bunny, we thought that it would be best to start off with that and then build upon it, since that is the main structure for the mask. To do this, we used half spheres, and we ended up getting them to the size that we wanted them to be, both horizontally and vertically. To do that, we took some basic measurements with a tape measure of our head to understand how wide and how tall we wanted it to be. And then we ended up making the mask just a little bit bigger to make sure that we had enough room to put some foam on the inside to cushion the mask around our head, and also to allow room for some breathing. We didn't want it to be so tight that it was directly up against our skin or that it became a burden to try to breathe inside the mask. We ended up using two half spheres to make the upper and lower part of the head. We elongated them to get the correct shapes. And then we took two more half spheres to make the cheeks. If you notice within our logo, we wanted to get this to look as close as possible to the logo and still look decent from different angles, because the logo is two-dimensional. And since this is going to be 3D, we wanted to make sure that no matter how you looked at the mask, it would still appear to be a bunny and look correct. Once we had the shapes that we wanted for the cheeks and the head, we merged all that together to make one solid object. We then used a sphere to go in and make the nose of the mask. Later on you'll see that we'll end up making the nostril to complete the nose, but for right now we're just trying to get a solid mask to make the outer shell. copied and pasted the overall mask once we got it to the position that we wanted all the shapes to be in. The reason why we did this is because once I had the solid mask shape the way I wanted it, in case there were any hiccups along the way with that mask, whether it be repositioning or some type of an error, I wanted to have another model to fall back on that was true to those original dimensions. This is the third attempt at getting this mask right, and the first two I had issues, and that's why I've decided to make the copies of the shapes. So each time that we come up with a new shape for a new part of this mask, I'm just copying and pasting an extra set on the side and locking them to make sure that if we need to use them again, we can do that. So we ended up making another model that we then shrunk to a little bit smaller of a size so that we can make it translucent, and then once we group that model with the other one, it'll hollow out the 3D object. That way all we have is an outer shell for the mask that we can work with. Okay, so to do the eye sockets, we had taken two spheres and two cone shapes and merged them together to get an egg shape to use as the eyes. The purpose of this was to be similar to our logo. We then positioned it correctly inside the mask, made it transparent, and then we merged it with the solid mask to make it hollow. That way we could get the eye sockets that we needed. So for the nostril, we wanted to, again, keep a similar look to our logo. And to do that, what I did was I took a disc model that they had in TinkerCAD, I made it transparent, and then I moved it to where I wanted it to be on the nose. Now what I also did was I flipped it upside down and I looked inside the mask to make sure that I was going to be cutting out all the area that I wanted to whenever I merged the two. Once I had that, I was able to merge them, get the hole that I wanted for the nostril, and then move on to the next step. So for the teeth, I knew that I wanted to keep a buck tooth design, the kind of signature teeth that rabbit have, and I wanted to make it its own piece of 3D printed plastic. And the reason why I wanted to do that was I knew I wanted to go with the color white, and we were going to make the masks black. So this way, if I was able to just make slotted holes in the mask and then have a solid printed tooth in white, I can just pop them in and it would be a separate color. I wouldn't have to worry about painting. I wanted to stay away from painting as much as possible on the mask because we were going to be handling the masks, and over time, and the more you touch, especially if it's plastic and painted, because paint doesn't stick to plastic quite as well as it does some other materials. And I knew that the more we touched it over time, the more likelihood there would be of the oils from our hands rubbing off the paint in different areas. So I didn't want to deal with that. So in this case, we modeled teeth that could slide in from the inside. To model the teeth, used a number of different shapes. We took some rectangles, rounded the edges of the teeth, that way it wouldn't just be blocky looking on the bottom, and then also some curved shapes to make the clip on the top. So the ideal is that whenever you push it in, there's going to be a little bit of a catch to hang it up on the inside of the mask and keep it from going all the way through, and it would be tight enough so that it wouldn't be loose and just fall out depending on what position you had the mask in. Once we had the one set of teeth made, we then made a transparent version, positioned it into the mask at the position that we wanted it to be in, and then we merged that object with the mask itself, which then made holes in the mask. We then went in, double checked to make sure that the teeth were going to fit okay, and then we moved on to the next step. to accommodate space for our neck, all I did was I used a half sphere, put it in the position that I wanted it to be in, made it transparent, and then grouped it with the mask. That way when we put the mask on, we don't have to worry about the bottom of the mask hitting our neck. There would be plenty of room there. To get the mouth hole where we wanted it to be, we used the location of the teeth, and then we put the teeth in just to get an idea of how far down they would stick. What I didn't want to do was I didn't want to make the mouth opening so large so that you could see it with the teeth inserted. Instead, I wanted the teeth to block the view of the hole behind it so that it looked more like a rabbit would look with its mouth closed and just with its teeth hanging down, like in our logo. So I just used a rectangle, I made it transparent, and then I moved it to the position that we wanted it to be in. Then once I merged that transparent block with the mask, it made the hole. Then we moved on to the next step. To accommodate for the strap to attach the mask to our head, I used a cylinder and I made it an oblong shape. I did this because I didn't want any rough edges or sharp edges to be there, so that over time as we wear the mask and we have the strap moving in different positions, it wouldn't be putting any more strain on the strap than possible. Now it may not have really been necessary to do it that way. I just felt that if I used an oval shape, because the mask itself had a lot of circles and ovals in it, that it would look better. I could have probably used a rectangular shape and did the same job. May have even been better, I don't know. But this is the way that I decided to do it. If you're looking to do something similar, you could just play around with the different shapes and see what you like most. So for the ears, it was a good bit of work that went into this, and I tried a number of different designs. What I ended up doing was making oval shapes and then putting two of the ends together to give it that kind of signature bunny ear that gets small from the bottom, gets large in the middle, and then goes smaller again towards the top. I then duplicated that, made it smaller, and then with the small shapes that I had duplicated, I made those transparent and grouped them with the outer to give the ear a hollow inside design. I thought this looked more accurate to what a bunny ear would look like, or at least as close as we could get with this and my limited abilities with 3D modeling, and the end result ended up working out okay. Then what I ended up doing to get the contour of the top of the head was I took a circle from the upper head, copied it, made it transparent, and then I placed that where I wanted it to be over the ears. That way, whenever I merged that with the ears, we would have that same rounded shape to match the top of the mask. Once all of that was done, it was a matter of getting the fit that I wanted in the different placement on the head. I then used two connector pieces on the bottom of the ears, merged them with the ear, positioned it on the mask, and then made those transparent so I could get the holes cut out into the top of the mask and fit the ears themselves. Once that was done, we had our ears done and we had the holes for mounting the ears in the top of the mask.
Dead bunnies.
So one big process that we had in this whole mask making ordeal was how we were going to do the eyes, because I didn't want the cavities to be empty, or the eye sockets to be empty where you could see our face, but I also wanted it to look similar to our logo. And on the logo, the eyes are like a teardrop or an egg shape design. So that's why we ended up using the egg shape design to make the holes in the mask, but then we're left with just an empty socket. So after a lot of back and forth, different options and things, I decided to move forward with a vacuum forming method. And in order to do vacuum forming to make a clear lens, we have to make a mold first. Well, to do that, I had tried different things, and what I ended up coming up with was making a 3D printed vacuum mold. So what you're seeing in the video here is how we actually made those molds to do the 3D printing and then to do the vacuum forming. To do that, I took the mask itself and then I started taking it apart by ungrouping. That way we could get back to the mask and the molds that I used to make the eye sockets. Once we got those loose and you could see everything, the different shapes, we started cutting everything apart to get a solid model of the face mask and of the eyes. And then we resized it and positioned it to make sure that it would fit inside of the other mask. The logic behind this is so that when we get to the shape and the size we need, once we vacuum form it, it should fit up through the inside of the mask, it being the vacuum formed plastic eye lens that we're going to make. Once we got this done and we went to print it, we printed it with the same PLA that we used to make the mask, and we found out that that wasn't the best idea. The reason why is because the PLA can't take high temperatures. It's good for being able to touch your skin on and all that, but in this case, that wasn't necessary because we were just using it to make a vacuum formed lens. So we ended up reprinting these in an ABS plastic. This is a plastic that's used for automotive purposes on engines and other things, but it can handle higher temperatures. So we ended up making it out of ABS plastic and everything worked out okay. Well, there you have it, everyone. So you've seen the full process of us modeling this. The next step is going to be actually printing this out and then assembling and painting and doing everything else that we need to get this to be a workable mask. So if you found this video helpful, please like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next episode of Adventures in Mask Making.